Hello, my friend. Welcome back to Mulenge Speaks series. Today we continue with our education. I call it education because the Banyarwanda are doing all they can to re-educate or to transform the history, to rewrite the history of Central Congo or Central Africa, in Eastern Congo, and in the Great Lake region. The Banyarwanda are doing all they can to rewrite that history. But with Mulenge Speaks, we are trying to defend that history, because those who came before us, before our parents, they had no profit at all. They had no reason to lie about the history. They were writing what they were seeing. They were witness of what they were seeing. That's what they were writing. So if they wrote that there existed people, culture, kingdom, state, principality, that means that's what they saw, and that's what they were writing. But our friends, the Banyarwanda living in South Kivu today, they are trying to rewrite that history. They're trying to teach our children and grandchildren a wrong history. So they are teaching even the Western, the American, the Canadian, the European. They're trying to teach them a different history. But we have to defend that the history that we grow in, that our parents grew in. That's the history we are trying to teach today. So we are educating our own children that they may know that the royal court or Bafuliro at Lemera existed and continue to exist. That the royal court at Kabindula in Uvira for the Bavira existed, and that it exists to this day. That the kingdom of Mulenge in the Fizi existed, and it still exists today. That the kingdom of Tanganyika in Fizi existed, and that it still exists today. That the kingdom of Nganja existed, that the kingdom of Mtambala existed. Though those kingdoms changed to sectaire in French, but they existed because they had kings. And in Mwenga, that what was called the collectivité sectaire d'Itombwe existed. So this is an education, and we hope that you are learning something. So today we are continuing with part 20, but we'll speak about part 20C, where we'll develop the law of 1972 that Mobutu enacted with the help or complicity of Barthélemy Bisengimana Rwema, a Munyarwanda who happened to be his chief of staff. Because we are in the session of education and re-education, defending the history, you forgive us that every time we start a new subject, we have to do a small recap, so that you can be following and have an idea where we are coming from and why we are taking this area of discussion to where we're going to end up one day. And so if you want to understand Mulenge today, the authentic Mulenge, you have to take the context. You have to be living in the context, in the African context, because you cannot understand Mulenge or the Banyarwanda today if you do not understand African culture. So we are explaining how things happened in Africa before and during the colonization. The same way you will understand the lives of Indian American and First Nations in Canada, for example, today, because they have history, they have cultures. And then if a Cherokee moved to Canada today, he or she won't become a Canadian autochthone or indigenous Canadian. she or he may become a Canadian citizen, but she keeps that pride to be a Cherokee of America or an Indian American. And so we also, as we come to America, to Europe, to Canada, as we migrate in different countries, though we embrace, we become new citizens of our new countries, but we have some blood that cannot be sold out, cannot be traded with anything in the world. That's our culture, and that's what we are defending. So on May 29, 1885, King Leopold II named the land that he just purchased from with the help of Henry Morton Stanley during his exploration of the Congo Basin, beginning in the 1877. He signed those treaties, Henry Morton, and then that land he purchased it on behalf of King Leopold II, and King Leopold II renamed that land because those lands belonged to some people, to some culture, though they were called indigenous people or autochthone or natives, but those people were human beings. It's when he bought that land in Congo Basin, he renamed that land Congo Free State, which we have been talking about. That was in May 29, 1885. At the same time, on the other side of the river, like Lake Kivu and the Ruzizi River, there were also lands. And one of those lands was the Central Kingdom of Rwanda. At that particular time, 1885, the land had a king, and the people had a king, and the king was King Rwabugiri. A little bit on the south of Central Kingdom of Rwanda, there was another kingdom, the Kingdom of Burundi. And the king who was there had his subject, and the subject were called the Barundi. So we did not have a separate population called Tutsi, another called Hutu then. They were all members of one tribe, the Banyarwanda in Rwanda and the Barundi in Burundi. While in the Congo, in the Free State, in the Free Congo State, the Congo Free State, we had different tribes. All those tribes, they were called by the name of their kingdom. But on the other side, we only had two tribes, either Banyarwanda in Rwanda or the Barundi in Burundi. And then we moved from 1885 to 1908. King Leopold II now ceded his property to the Kingdom of Rwanda, and the Congo Free State became the Belgium Congo. From this time forward, the Belgium Congo was governed as part of the Belgium under the control of governors or general governor, les gouverneurs généraux. Those general governors were 10, from Eugene Henry to Hendrix Cornelis. We had 10 general governors from 1908 to 1958. Those governors were controlling the Belgium Congo on behalf of the Kingdom of Belgium. And if you read the books, you see that the colony, the Belgium colony, or the Belgium Congo, was governed as part of the Kingdom of Belgium. During the same period of time, the status of the citizen in this Belgium Congo was the same as the status of the Belgium in Brussels. So they were Belgians in Brussels in Belgium, but in Africa they were also called the Belgium of Africa status. But in the German East Africa territory, which now here we are in 1908, so the the Kingdom of Rwanda and the Kingdom of Burundi, they are now part of the German East Africa, but they are governed by their own kings. So we have in Rwanda, for example, from the 1908 to the independence, we had King Kigeli IV Rwabugiri, almost 7 years. We have King Mibambwe IV Rutarindwa, 1 year, because he was assassinated by his brother Musinga. We have King Yuhi IV Musinga, who reigned 36 years. We have Mutara III Rudahigwa, who reigned 30 years. And we have Kigeli V Ndahindurwa, half a year, and was deposed due to the elections, democratic elections, and he went out of the country. So the population of this kingdom, though they were under the indirect rule from the German and later from the Belgium mandate, but they remain governed or ruled by their kings, who were persons who were giving all the orders and controlling the territory, administrating the territory with the help of the Belgium, under the supervision of the League of Nations. So we did not have three nationalities in this kingdom, the Kingdom of Rwanda, during this period. We did not have a nationality of the Tutsi or the nationality of the Hutu or the nationality of the Twa or the Batwa. They all belong to one tribe, the Banyarwanda. They also all belong to the same clan. For example, we had the clan of Abasinga Barenge, where they were the ritualists and the iron makers. We had the clan of the Abegas. If we divide that clan today, according to some historians, the clan of Abega had 75% of the Hutu and 20% of the Tutsi. The clan of Abagamba had 27% of the Tutsi and 73% of the Hutu. And the clan of the Abanyiginya, the clan that was ruling the kingdom, all these king that we will just seated here came from this clan. But in that clan, in particular clan, 27% could be identified as Tutsi. The rest of 73% were the Hutu. So we can see that in every clan, there were Hutu and Tutsis. That's why they all belong to one tribe. Because the tribe, we have the ethnic group, then we have the tribe, then we have the clans. And then the clans are break down to families. In Burundi, from the 1908 to the time the Burundi became independent, we had also kings that were ruling those countries, that kingdom. We had, for example, we had King Mwezi IV Gisabo, who ruled 15 years. We have King Mutaga IV Mbikije, who ruled 7 years. We have King Mwambusa IV Mbagirise Esenye, who ruled 50 years. And we have the fifth Ndizeye, who reigned 5 months. Again, during this period of these 4 kings in Burundi, we did not have 3 nationalities. We did not have a nationality, a proper nationality for a separate nationality for the Tutsi or the Hutu or the Batwa. They all belong to the same clans and they all belong to one tribe, the Barundi. The same way in the Rwanda. Now, when the Congolese round table of January-February 1960, the provincial election of 1959 and the constitution of 1964 all left out and separated this population of Rwanda-Urundi while they were still residing in the Congo or in the soil of Belgium Congo. They did not just leave them out because they were against them or they hated them, but because they belong to a different structure. because they were separate indigenous of neighboring colony. And so when Mobutu now comes in 1965, takes power, and then he starts ruling. 5 years later, in 71, Barthélemy Bisengimana Rwema tells him, look, we have to have this population. They were left out, but the Constitution of 1964 cannot control all the thousands of people that are here in this country. Especially that we know that different migration, different people came in different time. Every year we had some people from Rwanda, Burundi, because the country was so overpopulated. And then we had areas in Kivu and in Congo itself that were vast and empty. So it'd be difficult to have all this population, thousands of families, to register, fill application for citizenship, but we can help them through a shortcut. So they signed the 1971 law that we saw in the previous clip. And now today we're gonna see now what now the law of 1972. So Mobutu again with Barthélemy, they decide to sign another law. The law number 1972-002 of January 5th, 1972. That law states, I quote, persons of Rwanda Urundi who were living in the province of Kivu before January 1950 at the decisions of the colonial authority and who have since continued to reside in the Republic of the Congo to this day acquired the Zairian nationality on June 30th, 1960. Let me read that again. Persons of Rwanda Urundi who were living in the province of Kivu before January 1950 at the decisions of the colonial authority and who have since continued to reside in the Republic of the Congo to this day acquired or have acquired the Zairian nationality on June 30th, 1960. By reading these 4 sentences, we have to break down and see if we can analyze something in this law. For example, if we take a question from this law, what was the geographical area of the province of Kivu in 1972? Because the law says those who were living in the province of Kivu. So we have to know the geographical area of the province Kivu in 1972. In 1926, the district of Kivu was part of the province of Oriental or Province Oriental. In 1933, this Kivu district became part of the Costemasville province. In 1947, Costemasville became Kivu province and remained so until 1962. Then it was split into South Kivu, North Kivu, and Maniema between 1962 and 1966. From 1966 to 1988, it was reunited again as Kivu province. So the law of 1972 or the date of January 1950 include the Banyarwanda that we know today as Banyarwanda that are living in South Kivu and who are claiming to be part or coming from Mulenge, which for them means, Mulenge means all the area of the chain of Mitumba Mountains or the Haut Plateau and the Moyen Plateau of Itombwe. But we have to understand that this Kivu was touching the area of Ituri in the north, after it passed Ruchuru, Goma and Masisi, to the lower south of Lake Kivu. That was the province of Kivu in 1950. Then later it was split in two, the North Kivu, the South Kivu and the Maniema. Then it was reunited to become the province of Kivu. So there were populations that were coming in this province of Kivu, which was before the district of Kivu and became the 3 provinces, then reunited, then split again to today. So today we have the province of Maniema, the province of North Kivu, and the province of Sud Kivu. But the population that this law is talking about is those that are comprised in these 3 provinces today. And if we come down in the South Kivu, since South Kivu was part of the district of Kivu in 1950, we have to understand that there are population of Banyarwanda that were in South Kivu. And we'll show you the number of those population and the area where they were living. Also, we can also ask a second question from this law. So we already dealt with the geographical area of what is Kivu in 1950. The second question that we can ask is, what were these decisions made by the colonial authority? Because it says the persons of Rwanda, Burundi who were living in the province of Kivu before January 50 are the decisions of the colonial authority and who have since continued to reside. So what were these decisions? What kind of decision did the colonial authority took that brought the persons or national of Rwanda, Burundi into the Kivu? We know there are so many. There are so many. We have so many projects. For example, we had what was called the Mission d'Immigration de Banyarwanda. We had the Comité, we had the Company of Kivu. We had the Comité National of Kivu. We have the Somenki, Société Minière et Industrielle de Kivu. We have the Kivu Mine. We have the Somekubi. We have the Simetan. And also, we know that because of the National Committee of Kivu or the Comité National de Kivu, through this National Committee of Kivu, the Chemin de Fer de Kivu were created, or the Kivu Railways were created between 1931 and 58. We also know that there was another company that was called the Société Immobilière de Kivu. We had also la Société Auxiliaire Agricole de Kivu. So we know that we had so many projects or companies that were created in this district of Kivu, which became the 3 provinces, including the province of North Kivu and the province of Sud Kivu. So those were the decisions. And if we read very well, for example, one of those decisions and what was motivating this colonial authority to bring or to go and recruit workers, economic workers in the Rwanda, Burundi, to bring them in the Kivu during this time between 1928, when they created the Comité National de Kivu, or the Kivu, the National Committee of Kivu in 1929, to the time that Mobutu was signing this law, or even if we stop at 1950, that's almost 30 years. People were discussing, they were giving the reason why it was necessary that they recruit people from the other side of the Lake Kivu. For example, if you read the book of J. Nikes, the Belgium, Congo, and Rwanda, Burundi, he wrote at page 392, he wrote, I quote, "In the Belgium Congo, the authority have undertaken in conjunction with the anti-erosion mission the permanent settlement of the Banyarwanda in the Ruchuru, Masisi, and Goma territory, where they have been assigned pastures and triage. About 14,000 families were installed between 1949 and 1952, and it was intended to settle in all between 30,000 and 40,000 families. A mining company which recruit hundreds of workers in Rwanda or Burundi, carry them and their family by air to the Katanga district. This is only one company that's recruiting in Rwanda and Burundi and taking these families to Katanga today, which is the province of Shaba. And here we don't mention those that were recruited in the plantation of Kenkina, in the cotton, in the coffee, in the sugar cane, in cotton, in the mining. And we see already that there is a company here, the Somenki. We also know that we had some ports that were created. We also know that those parks, the park of Virunga, they were created. And then as the settlers were increasing, the demand of worker was also needed. There was also increasing. So the colonial authority decided that since the Rwanda and Burundi were overpopulated and the area west of Lake Kivu and the Ruzizi River was vast and empty, they needed to improve the workforce. So they recruited people to come and work in mining and the agricultural plantation in the Kivu. But those people, population did not return to Rwanda. Many remain in those areas to this day. And the funny thing is now, all this population, they did not come as Batusi, they did not come as Bahutu, they came as Banyarwanda. That's how they came as we just see here in this book of Nikes, the Belgian, Congo, and Rwanda, Burundi. So there was this erosion of settlement of the Banyarwanda in the Ruchuru, Masisi, and Goma. Maybe this population that we are talking about today that are claiming that are from Mulenge can say, okay, this is here concern the population in North Kivu. But we have to remember that the North Kivu and South Kivu were part of one province, the district of Kivu, which became province of Kivu. It is only later that it was divided into 3 provinces. So we had population from Rwanda, Burundi who came to Kivu, and they came in different time. Except this, that we know that at least we have a case where the population of Rwanda, Burundi came to reside in the Kivu before 1950. Now, another question that we can ask: persons of Rwanda, Burundi before January 50. That's what the law says, right? Persons of Rwanda, Burundi who were living in the province of Kivu before January 50. Can we retrace those population? Can we say exactly how many, who were this population, and where are they? In which exactly area, where did they go, where was installed? Well, of course, we already know that they came to work. Many came to work, and others came as individuals for their own reason. Are they still coming today? But all of them that are coming today, if they identify themselves as Tutsi, they'll say, we are from Mulenge. And so before January 50, with the increase of Belgium settlers, the number of Banyarwanda also increased. Between 150,000 to 300,000 Banyarwanda were brought to work in the park of Virunga National Park, created in 1925. We saw that the National Committee of Kivu was created in 1928. We saw that the Somenki was also created, and other mining companies were also created. So we know that the plantation were there. We know that the mining in Kivu were there, and in Katanga. For among these numbers, it is estimated that between 17,902 that came in 1928 and 1936, and 1,000 that came under the Mission d'Immigration de Banyarwanda, Mission of Banyarwanda Immigration. At least 100,000 Banyarwanda came to work and were installed or settled in this Ruchuru, Masisi, and Goma area, without counting those that came into the South Kivu. So if the Banyarwanda that we are trying to debunk here claim that no, we are not part of this group, we have to go and read, for example, the book of Jean-Claude Willam, who wrote his book in 1997. At page 82, the Banyarwanda and the Banyamulenge, his book, at page 82, he wrote that 3,000 individuals were settled in the hills of Bijombo, Masango, and Kanjovu. And among those 3,000 population were Banyarwanda. This is Jean-Claude Willam. He wrote his book in 1997. At page 82, he said that 3,000 before 50, 3,000 individuals were settled in the hills, in the mountain, or the villages of Bijombo, Kianjovu, and we know that the population that are claiming Minembwe today live in those areas. The group of Banyarwanda today that are in America, in Canada, in Australia, in Europe, that are claiming that are from Mulenge. If you live in the Uvira, in the Mwenga, in the Fizi area, zone or territory, all these families that are in America, in Canada, in Europe, they are claiming that their population are being decimated, they are being killed in these particular villages. So if they came before 1950, how can they claim that they are Congolese of origin? And this is the author that is claiming that they can give you the name and the page where he says that this population came in 1797. But his page 82 clearly states that before 50, around 3,000 Congolese and Banyarwanda were settled in this area, in the Bijombo, in the Masango, and Kianjovu villages. But it is not all, because the Banyarwanda can rewrite the history, but we have to defend it, and that's what we are doing. We are defending the history that exists. So we don't want our children and grandchildren to be confused. We don't want the American, the Canadian or European that are born from the parents that come from this area to be confused about where their parents come from. So this is one example of the Banyarwanda that came before January 50. Example, page 82 of Jean-Claude Willam, book 1997. Almost 3,000 individual Congolese. When he says Congolese, he means Bafulero, Bavira, Banyindu, Babembe, Bashi. And we have to remember that Kianjovu, Masango, and Bijombo are territories, are villages in the kingdom of the Bavira. And these villages are the western limit of this kingdom of the Bavira. The limit with, on the west-north, with the kingdom of Barega, the Mwenga zone, and on the west-south, the limit with the kingdom of the Babembe or Fizi zone. And we know that in that area, if you go a little bit further, you go into the Kamituga area, which was part of the Urega area, and you come down to Itombwe, Mulenge, all those areas, we have that they are mining area. So there was a reason why the Belgium or the colonial authority settled those people there. So we have that example. The second example is, if we go to the book of George West, remember the book of George, we have been talking about this guy all along when he wrote Le Pays du Vira, or the Vira Land, in 1954. And so at page 118 of George West, he did a census in 1952. And he says that there were 163 Banyarwanda whose arrival ranged from 1881 to 1884 to 1930 to 1939 to 4049 and to 1950. At page 118, page 118 of the book of George West, he says that in 1952 he surveyed 163 Banyarwanda in the village of Gali. So in 1952 there were 163 Banyarwanda in Gali. And when he asked them, when he interviewed them, when did you arrive in this village? Some of them said one person, the first person to arrive in that area came in 1881, then 1884, then 1930, then 1939, other came in between 49, then 1952. That's not all. On page 119 and 120, there were 3,548 individuals in 3 villages in Bijombo, Kianjovu, and Masango. We are in 1952 here, when he went to do a research on his book, for his book. So these 3,548 may include the 3,000 that Jacques Willama just spoken about. But among these 3,548 individuals in these 3 villages at the west limit, at the west part of the Kingdom of the Bavira, the village of Bijombo, Kianjovu, and Masango, they were Banyarwanda. And during his interview, the Banyarwanda told him that the first person to arrive in Masango arrived in 1938. In Kianjovu, other people arrived in 1946 and 1947. And the author George West that the Nyindu, the Banyindu, and the Bafuliru were more. Les Banyindu et les Bafuliru étaient nombreux que les Banyarwanda. So though the Banyarwanda were living in these 3 villages in the Kingdom of the Bavira, they did not constitute a great number, but they were also living with the Banyindu, the Bafulero, and the Bavira, of course, the owner of the kingdom. But they did not arrive there before 1900, as we see here. The one that talking about the one person that arrived in 1881 arrived at Gali, and Gali is at the frontier, at the border with Gali, which is in the Kingdom of Bavira, is at the frontier, at the border with the Kingdom of the Bafulero. So it was easy for the person who is in the Kingdom of Bafulero, after arriving at the border, which is in the plain, and crossing through the Moye Plateau, and arrive at Gali. Now, as they move forward toward the west, the first person arrived in Masango, 1938, then others follow in 1946 and 47. Then at page 191 of George West, he says in French, des frères Rwanda se sont installés en 1949 dans un hameau de Kirungu. In English, 2 brothers Banyarwanda settled in the hameau at Kirungu in 1949. So in 1949, another village in the Kingdom of the Bavira, 2 brothers Banyarwanda, he called them here 2 brothers Rwanda or Banyarwanda, settled in this village at Kirungu in 1949. So we have all the proof The Banyarwanda can rewrite, as I'm saying, the history of the area. But we know that Mobutu signed this law to grant all the population that came before January 1950 is because many of the Banyarwanda came into the Kivu for different reasons, mainly to work in the farms, in the plantation, and the mining. All these three observations from the law can be verified. The problem of the Banyarwanda is that they are in denial of all these realities. When the colonial administration was settling all these immigrants, it did not bring them as a Tutsi or Hutu, but he brought them as Banyarwanda. Again, because the Banyarwanda in the Ho and Lower Plateau arrived there through both the administration program and the contract of deposit or breeding cattle from the Fuliru and the Bavira, they have no way they can repay all the cattle they stole from the deposit of Fuliru and Vira. Remember in the previous video I showed you that Jacques de Pelchin, that's another author or researcher who completed his PhD in California. He wanted to study also the village or the Banyarwanda that were living in this territory of Eastern Congo in the South Kivu, particularly in the kingdom of Rwanda and Bafuliru. He said that the Bavira and Bafuliru were depositing their cattle because this Banyarwanda had expertise. So they were depositing their cattle. But as we know the story of the seasons, in summer the grass is dry. So the Banyarwanda, because they have expertise, they have to move in the cold area. Or we know as you move above some altitude, the season become cold or humid. As they were moving, they were taking with them the cattle that belonged to the Bavira and Bafuliru. And over the years, they never returned back. So those cattle multiplied. As they multiplied, it is difficult today to return them. So now they are in the Fizi area, in Mulenge, in Bijombo, in Minembwe, in Chanjovu here, and Bijombo, as they are claiming that Bijombo is now a grouping. But it wasn't grouping during this time, before 1950. Bijombo became a grouping in 1979. But before it was part of the grouping that existed then under the rule of King of the Bavira from the clan of the Benelenge. But for them, since they cannot return to Rwanda or they cannot live as Congolese in those areas, they are afraid that the Bavira and Bafuliru are going to ask them to return their cattle. But they have to defend themselves now that, look, we are Congolese of origin, we are indigenous, but this history shows that they are not. Because the dates when they arrived in this area, they're still there. Even the authors who wrote these books, they are not dead, they're still alive. So every time they came into a village, in either the kingdom of Bafuliru or the kingdom of Bavira, the books exist. We know each year when they came, where they settled, how they were settled, who gave them the land, who gave them the cattle, how they moved, how they entered into the Fizi region, and how they entered into the Mulenge region. So it is not something that we are trying to dismiss, because the history exists. So Mobutu here signed a law to recuperate those individuals, those families, some in Shaba, Katanga, and some in the Kivu area, in the North Kivu, where, for example, those who came to Masisi Ruchuru et Goma, they were given a kingdom, la collectivité de Gishari. The king came from Rwanda to control the land in the Belgium Congo. His successor also came from Rwanda. So if now we look at all these individuals, a family that came, if you consider all these dates, how come that all of them, they are called now that they are Banyamulenge? How is it possible? How is it possible that someone who claimed to have come in 1804, as Dr. Kaniki claimed at that video on YouTube, and others claim that they came in 1750 or 97. Now they are added to these who just came in the 20th century, 1930, 20, 40, 50. We are not even adding to those who came as refugees, because we know that the Red Cross and the UNCR settled Banyarwanda at Lemera, at Katobo, and at Kalehe. Those were refugees camps. They came before 1960, between 1960 and 1964. After the revolution of 1959 in Rwanda. Of course, many of these now in 1959, that those who came, many of them were Banyarwanda, Tutsi now. Because they left as the Hutu were taking control of the country through the democratic process. So if we combine all these numbers and the years of these people that came in this area, now all of them, they are claiming that now they are Banyamulenge. So you tell me, my viewer, how would you resolve this issue? That a person who came in 1797, another one came in 1804, now these who came in 20th century, how are they all of them Congolese origin? And how are all of them people from Mulenge? Many of them, they have never set their foot in Mulenge. They don't even know where the Mulenge exists, where Mulenge is situated. They don't know. Many of these children that are coming to America, to Canada, to Europe, they go and they do all kind of, they put all kind of social media event. They claim to be from Mulenge, but they have never been to Mulenge. They don't know where is Mulenge. But they are claiming that they are from Mulenge. They are claiming that they are Congolese. They can claim that they are Congolese, but they have never been to Mulenge. They don't know where is Mulenge. If you ask them where is Mulenge, they don't know. If you ask them where your grandparents were born, they cannot tell you where he was born, which hill the grandparents or mother or father were born. They don't know. Because they are just trying to rewrite the history. But as a culture stands, we have to protect the culture of any people. The Banyarwanda have their own culture, and so the Babembe, the Bafuliru, the Bavira, and the Bafuliru. And we have to defend our culture. Not that we are defending a civic nationality, we are defending an ethnic nationality that is based on their history before the colonial time. To conclude, I'm going to use another passage from another author here. Jason Stearns wrote on page 23 of his book, North Kivu, The Background to Conflict in North Kivu Province of Eastern Congo, a book that he wrote in 2008. Jason Stearns. At page 23, he said, in 1972, under the influence of various prominent Banyarwanda from North Kivu, especially his chief of staff Barthélemy Bisengimana, who had migrated from Rwanda around independence, the president passed a law granting citizenship en masse to anyone who had immigrated before 1960, excluded from the customary access to land because of their lack of a native authority. Affluent Banyarwanda, many of whom had fled to have had fled to the Congo due to the independence era program in Rwanda were able to capitalize on this law and on the more general Mobutu era principle that proximity or loyalty to the regime brought material reward. In this case, large tract of land in North Kivu. And so is the same in South Kivu. Because many who could not stand to stay with the Hutu in North Kivu found their way in the South Kivu. That's why you see those numbers, refugees, immigrants, those who came to work in the mining in Kivu, in the national park, those who work in the Kivu railways, those who worked in the plantation of coffee, kenkina, medicine trees, in construction of the roads. Even among them, those who went to work in Lubumbashi, in Katanga. You'll be surprised that many of them also they claim to be from Mulenge today. So any person in Congo today, unless I'm mistaken, but you can prove me wrong, any person that identifies himself as Tutsi today in Congo, they all tell you that they are from Mulenge. How is it possible? If you were brought to Katanga, your grandparents were brought to Katanga in 1930, 40, 50. You were born there. You grew up there. You worked there. Those who were brought with Musinga, the King Musinga, when he was relegated to Moba, at the border of the end of the zone of Fizi, with the area in the Kalemi and Moba. Also, they are claiming that they're also from Mulenge. So we can see that the system of colonization, they want to create a Tutsi land in the area. They are not ready to let it go. So they have to claim and stand on this customary status or Congo of origin status, so that they can have that grab on the land. As we see here, Jason Stein saying that because they lack a native authority, and that is making them mad, is making them crazy, because they have no access, or they don't have a native authority, so they have to have that. But who says that if you don't have a native authority, you can't be a Congolese? Who says that if you are not a Cherokee, you can't be an American? Who says that if you are not a First Nation in Canada, you cannot be a Canadian? So this is an education that we are doing to inform you that all this law that Mobutu passed in 1971, 1972 was to include the Banyarwanda, both Hutu and Tutsi today, as part of the Congolese society or Zairean society, to develop the country and move forward. Those who were not able to return because they were brought early on in the Congo, Belgium Congo, to work as a workforce, they have all the right to be Congolese, to claim all the political rights, but they don't have to be Congolese of origin, because that status was very special, and it remained special because it is recognized in all the constitution. Every constitution that was ever written in Congo recognized the Congolese of origin based on the time Henri Morton signed those treaties from the kingdoms and the kings, and they were fusion, and then they became one country, the Congo that we know today. Those are different from the Banyarwanda that we know. And so, my friend, I'll stop here. We are trying to educate you, to educate our children, to educate the culture, And we hope that we are learning something, and we hope that our brother and sister Banyarwanda, they will understand that culture cannot be negotiated. You are who you are because you have a culture, you have a mother tongue, you have a tradition, and those are not negotiable. So to conclude, Mobutu tried to help the Banyarwanda as he could, but he was not above the law, though it was the case many times. In this case, the Congolese overrid him, and he and the Banyarwanda lost, not because they could not become Congolese or Zairian citizens, but because the amnesty for the Banyarwanda was not the right way to go. But the Banyarwanda today, they still want to go through that way. So, what was the conclusion? The conclusion is that Mulenge predated the arrival of the Banyarwanda. Mulenge predated the arrival of Henri Morton Stanley. Mulenge predated the Belgian settler. Mulenge predated the Congo Free State and the Belgian Congo. And we know that all those villages in the Kingdom of Bavira or Territoire d'Uvira, in the Bafulero area and in the Bavira area, namely all those villages that they can call Munanira, Kijembwe, Galie, Kinjovu, Bijombo, Masango, all those villages belong to indigenous Bavira, and Mulenge belong to indigenous Bafuliru, and Minembwe belong to indigenous Babembe, and Itombwe and Lulenge, Itombwe belong to indigenous Barega. Those are not negotiable because they are part of our culture, and culture is not negotiable. So thank you. Hope to see you next time. We'll talk about rebellion, because rebellion is another subject that they claim that the Bavira, Bafulero, Babembe, Barega were against them. That's why they fought them in the rebellion, because the rebellion was against them. But is it so? Stay tuned next time.